there's no such thing as a non-compliant client. It's just a loss of rapport between the client and the therapist. And that as therapists, rather than blaming the client, we need to actually think about how we can support the client and work with them collaboratively to find out what the barriers are to their change. And I think this is so important for helping clients make changes with diet and nutritional therapy. And I think it ties in very well with what Kathy was saying, and what Dr. Andrew was saying about self-compassion, about really, being aware that this is, change is difficult, and we need to be compassionate to ourselves and to our clients. And so with that in mind, I'm thinking we all have our own ideas about diet and nutrition, and we think that we know what what we need to eat and what we need to do. But actually, if you think about it, do we actually follow this all the time? So if you think about that for yourself to begin with, and think about the thoughts that come up for you, then it's really, really important to consider this when you're thinking about your clients. So next slide, please. Next. So what I'm going to cover, and I hope I'm going to have time to cover all of this, is thinking about collaboration and communication. I'll speak quickly so that we get through it. Assessment, meeting your client where they are now. I think the previous speakers have spoken about this. Thinking about their capabilities, opportunities, and barriers to change. And then some very simple nutrition strategies that you can use. Creating easy goals and easy wins, and that's going to help your client stay motivated, and also dealing with cravings and lapses. So, okay, next slide. So I think this is something you actually will all be aware of as hypnotherapists, that we're working with a client collaboratively. And so we're walking alongside them, holding their hand, as Kathy so put it so well. And really, even with nutrition and helping clients make dietary changes, we need to view the client as an expert on themselves rather than telling them what to do. I think, I see this all the time in the student nutritional therapy clinic, that the students get into a directive mode and they're not looking at the client's body language, and they're not listening to the client and thinking about the client's own situation regarding making changes. So next slide, please. So very important as well, I think, is how we communicate with the client. So before we start to make recommendations, you can ask them what they know about a topic. Have you heard about blood sugar spikes? What do you understand by unhealthy fats? And ask permission. Will you give advice? Would you be interested to learn more about? And then when it comes, clients can often have very strong beliefs about food. And if we jump in and challenge these too bluntly, it can create antagonism, and they may feel that they don't want to make changes. So if a client comes out with a black, you could maybe query this gently. That's interesting. Where did you learn that? Can you trust this source of evidence? Next slide, please. So with this in mind, I encourage clients to start to use permissive language with themselves. I often hear, when I'm listening to them in the assessment, a lot of shouldn'ts, mustn'ts, musts, can'ts, need to. And so I encourage them to use more permissive language, sort of things like I can or I could, so that they this encourages a more flexible mindset. And I also encourage them to think of principles rather than rules. So quite a lot of people, intermittent fasting is very popular in the UK at the moment. And people are getting in a terrible state if they eat at the wrong time of day. And yet it can be very difficult to fit this into a busy day. So if somebody's gone all day without eating, and then they have this idea that they can't eat after 8 o'clock, and then they go to bed hungry and they can't sleep because they're hungry, that's not really going to support their health. So rather than doing this, replace that with, I aim to eat my dinner by 7 p.m. But if that's not possible, then you have it when you can. So next slide, please. So when I'm assessing someone, I'm really thinking about where they are in the cycle of change, stages of change. I expect you're all familiar with this, but this comes from motivational interviewing, Prochaska and Di Clemente. But I'm really thinking about where clients are. So if they're in the pre-contemplation, contemplation stage of change, they're just sort of thinking about things. There's no point in jumping in and making a plan and thinking about goals at that stage. I would be more encouraging them to find out about nutrition, and maybe to keep a food diary and correlate that with their symptoms so that they can see where they are now and how what they're doing is affecting the way they feel. And then when they're moving into the preparation and action stage, that's when you can really work with them to start to make some goals. And I often see clients who are in the relapse stage. So they've made changes, but they've fallen back into old patterns of behavior. So perhaps something happened in their lives, or perhaps what they were doing was just too strict and not suitable. It didn't suit their lifestyle. And people in this stage can often feel like a complete failure. So they're coming to you again, and they're wounded at this stage. They're being quite self-critical. So that's where the compassion is really, really important at this stage, and really helping clients to identify what went well as the barriers. Next slide, please. So I try to be curious and non-judgmental and really watch the tone of my voice at this stage. So a client may come in to see me, and often this is a very, very common goal. I want to lose some weight. And so really important to find out as much as possible about this. So what's the purpose of this? How much weight do you want to lose? When do you want to achieve this by? Have you done this before? What happened? What did you do? What did you find useful? What was not useful? Etc., etc. How did you regain the weight if they regained? So we're talking about this and being supportive, looking at, the client's resources. What have they done previously that can really help them? What can they draw on in their environment, in their social networks, from other areas in their life? Next slide, please. And then really important, I think, is to find out what the client's capabilities and opportunities are. So often I've seen within the student clinic, students really being over enthusiastic and giving clients really reams and reams of advice and complicated meal plans with, what are the level of the client's cooking skills? Do they have time to cook or prepare food? Do they enjoy cooking? Maybe somebody else does the cooking and shopping in their household, so they have very little control. Maybe if they have a very busy working schedule, they don't have the opportunity to access healthy food at lunchtime or when they're at work. And then looking at their likes and dislikes and how much change they can actually cope with. And what I find typically is clients overestimate the changes they can cope with. They often think that they can cope with a lot of change, but in reality, after a few weeks, you see, oh, right, they've overestimated this and we may need to scale this back again. So really important. Next slide, please. And the barriers to change. Often clients have gone on diets that have left them feeling really hungry, or they've embarked on exercise programs that have left them tired, or they've just got too much to do. And then a really important element, which Kathy talked about, is stress. So stress really affects people's ability to change. So next slide, please. So sometimes, particularly when clients are in the pre-contemplation or contemplation stage, or if they've come in, having lapsed and they're feeling really bad, the most important thing to do at this stage is just to help them get in tune with their bodies, relax, maybe learn how to do some breathing exercises, body scans, particularly when they're eating. Are they eating mindfully? Are they eating at their desk? Are they eating too quickly? Just to get some awareness going and help people to really set aside some time each day just to relax. And that can be one of the most important steps at the beginning of a nutritional program. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to have much time to talk to you about actual dietary changes. But one of the most important dietary changes, and it can really affect absolutely everything to do with physical and mental health, is helping clients to regulate their blood glucose. I can't emphasize this enough. It's the first usual step I do in clinic with any client, no matter where they're at, is because it's so crucial, because this can help clients to stop feeling hungry, to stop having cravings for the foods that they know that they want to stop eating. And it can also help with such a wide range of symptoms to do with physical and mental health. So I won't read them all out, but you can see them there. And unfortunately, I can't see you all at this stage. I would actually practice what I preach and say to you, what do you know about blood glucose balance and what do you know about blood sugar spikes? But I'm presuming that you all know something. But basically, when somebody has low blood sugar, it is going to affect their ability to comply. They're not going to want to stay with what you've advised if they're feeling hungry, if they're feeling tired, and if they can't concentrate, or if they're having more distressing symptoms like headaches and dizziness, etc., etc. Next slide, please. So something clients often don't know is that foods supply energy at different speeds. So we digest simple carbohydrates very quickly, and that raises our energy and glucose levels very quickly. And then they peak and then they fall quickly. So often within half an hour to an hour. But other foods, such as foods high in protein, take longer to digest and be converted to glucose. So they sustain us for longer, and also they have more nutritional benefits in the body, such as helping with neurotransmitter production and muscles, helping with muscle maintenance, etc. But one of the most interesting factors is that fat actually keeps your blood glucose sustained for a lot longer than carbohydrate. So people, or particularly fast release carbohydrates such as sugary foods and drinks, and people are often on diets that restrict fats or exclude or attempt to exclude fats, and that's really not good for you because you'll always be hungry if you do that. But also we need fats for our metabolism and particularly for brain function. So people on low-fat diets are likely to be hungry and miserable. So unless there's a medical reason to restrict fat, I would work at ensuring that they've got some healthy fats in their diet each day. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the red dotted line refers to a day where a client's eaten foods that have really dysregulated their blood sugar. So their blood sugar is going up and down all day. So Special K is promoted in the diet industry as helping with weight loss, but in actual fact, it's a refined cereal which raises blood glucose, and after a blood glucose, the client will feel hungry and tired. So then they've gone for coffee, which is a stimulant, and some fruit, which is could be high in sugar, to boost their blood sugar again. They've had another peak. They've gone for a baguette, which is a white refined carb, and a chocolate bar. So we're seeing this pattern going on throughout the day. Pasta and tomato sauce for dinner, that's got no protein there, and possibly quite low fat. So they're going to feel hungry and tired throughout the day. And in actual fact, they may have consumed quite a lot of energy, quite a lot of calories. So if they're trying to lose weight, that's not going to be so good for them. And it's also it hasn't got many nutrients, particularly it's quite low in fiber. So if a client eats according to the green line, they're including more protein, more healthy fats, and these sorts of foods will promote better energy levels throughout the day. And well, that fish with vegetables and brown rice, that sounds a bit boring for dinner, but obviously you can find a way of adding in spices to make this more enjoyable. So that's just a very simple snapshot. Next slide, please. So, right, this is sorry, this slide hasn't come out so well, right. Anyway, this is just to show you what I usually use this with all my clients, whether they're underweight, overweight, whatever their health goals are. I encourage clients to look at a balanced meal food plate. This means that I'm encouraging people to eat a really wide range of foods. Obviously, not all this food in one meal, but what I like clients to do is to eat a quarter of their plate as protein foods. And this can be plant proteins as well as animal proteins. But animal proteins tend, the ones that have come up in blue type actually contain healthy fats. So they're really good for you. Carbohydrates, I encourage people to eat slow release carbohydrates, so whole grains and coloured starchy vegetables, so things like carrots in them and more fibre. And then half their plate could and should be, can be, foods, a wide range of coloured vegetables, and these are vegetables that grow above the ground, so they're non-starchy. And again, this will have a wide range of antioxidants, phytonutrients, and fibre as well. So by doing this, the client eating like this, particularly including some healthy fats as well, some olive oil, some butter, or some coconut oil, and this will really the client feeling full, so that they're less likely to snack, less likely to get cravings. And this can really help a client with any according to the client's individual goals. I have some clients who need to gain weight, and then we have to change it to half the plate as carbohydrates and maybe add in some oils and fats. But this is by eating such a wide range of foods, that provides more nutrients. So I encourage people not to eat the same thing every day, particularly as we move further into therapy. And the fiber and in the carbs and in the non-starchy veg will feed the gut microbiome. And as we know, that really promotes health in every single area of the body. And it also really helps with mental health as well. Yeah, so next slide, please. So I think it's a really good idea to get clients to, when they're thinking about their goals, to do some future pacing. And I know that you all know about this. Take a client into the place where they want to be. How will they feel when they wake up in the morning with more energy? And really get into that sensation, get the sensory information, anchor this, maybe have a picture somewhere that they can access, so that when they're feeling a bit discouraged, they can access that easily. I would say that it's a good idea to set this, once you've done this in the consultation, to set this as homework so that they practice doing this every day, so that this becomes more into their present state as well. Next slide. This is going back to what we were talking about with capabilities and opportunities. I find that it's a good idea if a client can't cook, doesn't have time to cook, then it's a good first step is to help them make some healthy choices with food deliveries. So we have a wide range of food deliveries here in the UK, especially in London, where I live. So you can actually get clients to change, if they're ordering things with, say something like fish and chips every day for dinner or not, then you can help them access healthier takeaways, such as Middle Eastern food or foods with more vegetables in them. And then there are recipe books such as Mindful Chef, which have simple recipes and they provide all the ingredients. And that's really good for people who want to learn how to cook, but they don't know what to do. Breakfast is often a difficult meal for busy clients. So just giving them some simple options, like a piece of fruit and some nuts that they can just put in their bag and eat on the way to work. It's a useful snack as well. Other easy wins are things like clients often can't access healthy food at work, so they can either bring food in, say a bag of healthy lunches which last for the whole week, or from which they can assemble lunches, or they could make extra food at dinner time and then pack that as a lunchbox the next day. And then thinking about adding in foods rather than taking them away. And I like to think of, we're working towards getting the client to really almost crowd out the undesirable foods with more desirable foods. So adding in a glass of water with every caffeinated drink to help them become more hydrated. Next slide, please. And this is a lovely technique, the and technique. So clients quite often are quite rigid. They have quite rigid thinking. And this is really good to use with picky eaters as well. So thinking about a client that always has a biscuit or some chocolate in the afternoon with their tea, and they don't want to give this up, or they're having issues giving this up, they know that it would be good to have something else instead. A first step is to get them to have that thing as well as the biscuit or as well as the chocolate. And this helps to create new associations in their brain and flexible thinking. And if you add in a protein food as well as a sweet food, such as nuts with chocolate, then actually what you're doing is you're helping them balance their blood glucose. So it's an easy win, and they will feel more satiated, and they will have had more nutrients. So I love this technique, and clients like it too. So next slide. I like to check motivation with clients before they leave the consultation. So I get them to tell me out of 10 how sure they are that they will actually do what they've said they will do at the end of the session. And if they give something lower than 10, then I need to find out what the barriers are. So in this case, the client had said that they would drink a glass of water every morning when they get out of bed. Well, that's quite, you know, will they actually do this? This is the first consultation. They're not in the habit of doing this. So they might forget at the weekend. So rather than start with a goal that's unachievable, start with one that they can do, such as doing it from Monday to Friday, and that will raise their motivation level up to a 9. So next slide, please. And I think a really good way of helping clients align their goals with their symptoms and stay motivated is to get them to track a symptom that they want, that they're working on, such as energy, with what they're eating. So you can see in this case, we've got 2 days from the food diary. And in the first day, the client didn't eat so well. They skipped lunch. They had quite a lot of caffeine. They had biscuits, and their energy levels slumped. So by the evening, they were exhausted. Then the next day, they ate better. And as you can see, their energy levels were much better. And I think it's really worth doing this with clients, because then they can really see, oh, this change, you know, it's worth doing. And it actually makes me feel better. And clients, it really helps if they can see this recorded somewhere. And there are actually apps out there that you can use, which use a tool called the MyMop and things like that, where you can actually get clients to record this, and they can see there are little graphs and things that they can see, which show their progress with their symptoms and their food diary. Next slide, please. This is about really, we all get cravings at times, and we can give in to a craving, or we can use a simple technique called the stop method. And the stop method is really easy for a client to remember. Just stop. So you stop, you take a breath, which obviously calms down your nervous system. Observe what's going on. What's going on? Am I hungry? Did I forget to eat my lunch? Perhaps I should just go back and eat my lunch. I'm feeling stressed. Oh, and then what's another way to view this situation, this craving? Get a new perspective. And you can also future pace at this time. How will I feel if I go ahead and actually eat this food? How will I feel if I go ahead and eat my chocolate bar instead of going back and having my lunch or going for a walk around the block? How will I feel in 10 minutes time? And how would I feel if I did the other behavior, went for a walk, or whatever the other behavior is? And that's one technique, and you can run through this technique with your client in the consultation. Another very easy technique is Zen 10. And this might be a bit weird if they're in a busy office, but they count down from 10 to 1 very slowly. And again, this actually really slows your breathing. So if you can imagine you're counting 10, 9, and really slowing that right down. By the end of counting down, you've slowed down and the craving may have gone. And then there's another one called DDD, delay, distract, decide. And that's a similar thing. You delay, you say, okay, I want this particular food, but I'm going to delay for 10 minutes and I'm going to distract myself. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to phone a friend, or I'm going to read a book or go for a walk. Then after that 10 minutes, I'll decide what to do. Next slide, please. So I always like to, when clients come back to me, they're usually bringing their food diaries with them. And I like to view lapses as learning opportunities. And I encourage the clients to do this. So it's about having self-compassion. So being curious, not furious with themselves. How could we do this better? What would work better for you? And you'll find that clients have a lot of self-critical thinking. So I sometimes get clients to actually write this down on their food diaries. And then we can turn this around and see how they could change this so that they're less hard on themselves and go back to that permissive language. And also using the 80-20 principle, recognizing that we're not going to be perfect all the time, far from it. And we're aiming for 80-20, eating well 80% of the time, 20% of the time, maybe having something different. But some weeks that's not going to be 80-20, it could be 50-50, it could be 40-60, but we're doing the best we can. Next slide, please.
Joanna, if I can just interject at this stage, we've got about a couple of minutes maximum left, because we do have
I'm on my last two slides.
Lovely. Okay, thank you.
Great. I think finally, and I'm sure you'll know about this, but really when we have a client in the room, we're working with different parts. So the client may come to you wanting to change, but they're not aware that they may have some beliefs in their unconscious mind which are holding them back. And so really we're helping the client as they go through their barriers to change to identify these parts and the beliefs and values that underlie these parts, and to work with them to actually find how they can, either think about changing their beliefs or meet their values and beliefs in a different way. And I found that's really helpful when I'm working with clients with disordered eating and eating disorders. Next slide, please. And this is my final slide. And this comes from motivational interviewing. And I think it's a lovely slide to finish on because it's basically sort of summing up what I've been trying to say, which is really we're resisting telling the client what to do. We need to understand their motivations, values, needs, etc. We're listening to them and we're helping them to empower themselves. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Joanna, for a very insightful presentation. I personally, for me, it's a constant battle with balancing nutrition and the desires and my love of food. So I find it a daily battle, and I'm sure I'm joined by many people in the audience who do as well. Got a few questions for you, so I shall start from the top. How do you deal effectively with a client's overt resistance to change?
Right, okay. Well, I think again, it comes back to being non-judgmental and not trying to jump in with solutions. It's about asking the client what's going on for them. What did they see as their barriers? What, they're coming to see you, they're paying for sessions, but they're not actually making any changes. And I think what's come up for me in the past is that sometimes they're seeing me, they might be associating me with a figure from their past, such as a teacher or a parent. And so that's where the resistance is coming in. So exploring that with the client. I had a client last year who wanted to lose weight, and he seemed to be, he was wanted to rebel at the same time. So he actually came to an online consultation and he was swigging from a bottle of beer, So that was quite an interesting conversation that we had about that. So I would explore what the underlying reason is for that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And considering we are the London College of Clinical Hypnosis, what do you feel? Do you feel that there's mileage in the nutrition profession and the hypnotherapy profession in working together in tandem, building professional networks
Definitely.
where hypnotherapists and nutritionists can refer between each other?
I would say yes, definitely. And actually, part of the nutritional therapy core curriculum is it now includes behavioral change and NLP. But I think it's really important for nutritional therapists to recognize their boundaries, so that I would really strongly recommend that you can work together. And I think it's also really difficult for a hypnotherapist to, I know because of having done 2 trainings, how difficult it is to keep up with all the knowledge on and practice on both sides. So I would say yes, work. I really like multidisciplinary teams. So yes, yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, that has brought us to bang on the dot of 11:35 here in the UK, 6:35 in Malaysia, and I think 9:35 in Eastern Australia in the evening. Joana, thank you very much for a very enlightening talk and the very visually valuable and informative slides that you shared. We've got some other questions for you. Would you be able, would you be happy for us to send them to you after the conference to give some responses to them, and then we'll share them with all of the delegates?
Yes, that would be fine. I'd be really happy to do that.
Lovely.
And
Joana, thank you very much. It's been an absolute honor and very informative.
Well, thank you.
Been some wonderful comments. So thank you very much. And Tom, I'll hand over back to you.